Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, best Cornetto Trilogy film.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Well, Hal, we're sitting here in this beautiful movie theater. We're about to watch 3 genre movies in a row, and there's an empty seat. We got to fix that. We can't watch these movies by ourselves.
Well, wait, you haven't watched these movies yet? We're supposed to talk about them. We're not here to watch them. Forget it. Mara Wilson is here. Mara, hello. Welcome,
hello.
Our pal.
Thank
Hi,
you for
Mara.
having me. Hi.
Thanks for coming on the show. This is exciting.
Yes. I'm very happy to be here. This is a podcast, so you can't see this, but I actually put a little red sticker on my shirt today, so I could actually say, "You got red on you."
Fantastic.
Yes, exactly.
Going deep already.
Oh yeah. That's my reference. I didn't want to lie and do it. I was actually searching through my drawer. I was like, do I have anything red? And then I remembered that like one of my notes on my phone is like, do your red laundry today. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't.
Do you separate out the entirety of like red gets its own?
Okay. I am like an incredibly messy person, but I'm very specific about certain things. Like I'll just leave like my crap everywhere. And forget like that. And like, I don't want to be messy, but it's just too much of a hassle.
Yeah.
And so I try to be clean about some things, but I end up being very clean about like very specific things. And one of those is that I have to separate my clothes into different colors. And so I actually recently got this and I got like 4 or 5 different bins. And so I have the reds, pinks, and purples, the blues and greens, the blacks, and the white.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I like that. I usually just go, whites, darks, lights. That's my combo. Lights, mediums, darks, basically. But
yeah, for me, I'm like, no. Oh, and then I also have to have an area where I can do the hand wash and dry clean. Yeah. Like that's something that I'm very specific about. And having that system has actually brought a lot of peace to my life because before it was just different piles on my floor. So there was like pink clothes mountain and blue clothes mountain and white clothes mountain and dark clothes mountain. And like,
by the way, that sounds delightful. Just a rainbow mountain range in your living room.
It wasn't as delightful as it sounded, especially not where like sometimes I'd put them in a bag and then one of my cats would come and pee in the bag.
Sure.
So, it was not delightful. It was not as delightful.
It's raining on Pink Mountain today.
Exactly.
Raining on Pink Mountain is a great country album. I don't know if you ever heard it. Loretta Lynn.
It's Dolly. It's Loretta.
It was Loretta. Dolly guests on it. You were remembering that she's on it.
Raining on Pink Mountain.
You did that for show choir, right?
I did. We did. Yeah. I can still remember the box step and the jazz hands. Yeah.
Sure. You were all wearing bowlers and vests with pink sequins.
We had like a cool and sexy show choir. Like show choir was like where the popular kids went in my school. Or at least they went into like they were in the top choir, basically. Yeah. The rest of us were we were in the lower choirs. I was in one of the like developing choirs my freshman year and they treated us like crap. But if you were in the top choir, then you were a star. Like it was what, the quarterback and the head cheerleader are at every other school. It was cool. Yeah. Because it was Burbank. So it was adjacent to LA. And so it was sort of like there were girls who were in like a girl band that were in like a girl group. They were in like selling albums in the real world girl group. And also a high school choir. I mean, they were supposed to be. They weren't that good, and they didn't have much representation. I don't think. Like they were okay. Like they performed at one of our shows, and we were all just kind of like, yeah, you guys are fine. But they still like had. I think they had some kind of record deal, and yeah, there were kids there who were like on TV and would like sing at shows and like charity events and had like sung on TV and done all this stuff. So yeah, it was like a legit. It was kind of culty, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like once you get into that system of like either
singing, which I did in high school, and theater, like both of those, there's definitely like a caste system that forms. Ours was, we didn't have a show choir because we were too small, but we had a chorus, and then the chamber singers were like the really good singers.
Yeah.
So that was like my goal to try to get in. Like, I need to be one of the chamber singers.
Oh yeah. Chamber was the top choir at my school too. Well, it was chamber half the year when they did, classical music.
Right.
And then the rest of when they went into this is really funny. When they went into, show choir mode, they became Powerhouse.
That was the name of the
that
group.
Was the name.
Powerhouse.
Like Gem, like
Powerhouse. Yeah, exactly. Like Gem or like
hold a mic stand up to the sky and it electrocutes it like He-Man, and then
exactly
by the power of amplification. Yeah.
Yes, Powerhouse. We all had that. Like there was the treble choir, but it was called decibels. There was the girls choir, which was madrigals, but madrigals became sound sensations. Yeah.
Wait, was the girls' choir Madra space GALS?
No, it wasn't. But the girls' choir, which I was in my first year, that was like that had more of like the younger kids in it, and they put me in there because I couldn't dance. They told me, they were like, "We like your voice, but you can't dance," and I was like, "Yeah, I can't. It's true." So they put me in that, and it was decibels. Like BELLES.
I love that name. That's a look. No notes. That's a perfect name for really all girl high school.
Well, it's like acapella groups. Acapella groups all have to have pun names.
Yeah, they all sound like pub quiz names.
They do. They absolutely do. I think my college boyfriend was in one called Vocaholics.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Pretty good. They're all addicted to Vocahol.
I was in a barbershop quartet in high school. We were called the Quaker Oats because I went to a Quaker school. So we didn't
that's
have
actually
like a
kind
pun,
of adorable.
But that was what we went with.
That's also a tell me you're from the Philly area without telling me you're from the Philly area kind of
That's
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Which for the Quaker school, Quaker, all of it. Just really,
yes,
it's all
of it. Just all of it. Just all of it. Yeah. I mean, I have a family member who lives in that area and teaches in that area. And it's all, that all checks out.
Yep.
You know, at a Quaker college like that. Yeah, absolutely checks out.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Do all the Quaker schools have friends in the name? Is that a thing?
Not the colleges.
Not the colleges, but the colleges do have to do everything by consensus. Which
like
is,
of the whole classroom? Like, if the crowd, you're going to have homework. No, we're not.
Not the classrooms, but like all the staff meetings. And I think like all the student club meetings have to be done by consensus.
Yeah.
I know staff meetings too, at least. If the spirit moves you to talk, you can, which like is great, but also it means that meetings and club meetings can go on for hours and hours.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The spirit has been moving Angie to talk every meeting we've ever had.
They say something like, the spirit is a chatty broad.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
Which is a bit sexist.
Moving me towards the door instead of speaking. I gotta
exactly.
go. I have pizza to get. Yeah. We had meeting for worship every week. I was there from 2nd grade until 12th grade, all the way through. And you would sit there in silence for 40 minutes. And people could speak if the spirit moved them. And it was like everyone was real quiet except for teachers until you get to 12th grade. And then everybody takes turns standing up and talking about like, I was writing my essay last night and I was thinking about how much I'm going to miss everybody. And these are the special times I'll never forget. And
don't make fun of that. That's sweet.
That's nice.
I did it too. No, when you hear it the third time, you're like, hold on.
Yeah.
You can't all like, I know some of you horse kicked me in the chest when we were 12. I don't want to remember you. I talked about you in therapy. I had to role play. Do you know how bad that was for me? I'm not remembering you.
I had a weird high school experience because I had my like show choir culty one at public school. And then I went to art school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which was a different kind of weird. Yeah, that was a different kind of weird. And we had all school meetings and anybody could get up and present at an all school meeting. And usually it was like announcement of like, my senior recital is this Saturday. Everybody please come. Or the theater department is doing this show and something like that. But there were people who would just go up and just like say whatever crap they felt like saying. And it was, very inappropriate jokes or very stupid things. Or, I think I stood up there once and told people to please not overload the washing machines in our dorms because
you are very serious about your laundry.
I'm doing a load of reds and then a load of blue.
I am. Well, it was because they overloaded it and a button got stuck on the side and it started smoking.
Ooh.
So smoke started coming out.
It took up cigarettes.
Yes, actually, I mean, that was a big problem at our school, actually. All art schools, at every art school, everybody smokes too much. I never did because I was a goody two shoes and had asthma. But, yeah, I never smoked, but a lot of people did. But yeah, the genes, the smoke started coming from there. And so I stood up and announced to people to be very careful about what they did. So
yeah, this seems like a pragmatic thing. Like, I imagine there weren't that many pragmatic people standing up and saying things in these all school meetings.
They told me later that it was probably, the head of the school was like, it's probably, like, the rule was it was supposed to be in the community interest. And if it wasn't, so he'd always go, community interest, guys, community interest. And he said, well, that probably could have been a dorm meeting thing. But dorm meetings, we stopped having dorm meetings because they just became very, people like, what is the real life version of like subtweeting? Like passive aggressively being like, also, you guys really need to do this. And also people really need to stop running down the hall because we live below them and it's really loud. Yeah. And guys, please, wrap up your garbage when you do this. And it was always like very specifically like looking at each other, very much like, you guys need to be doing this and we should be doing this. And, we stopped having them because they got too mean and uncomfortable. So I just stood up in all school. Probably my favorite thing in all school to do though is we had to talk about grad night, and grad night was at Disneyland, but Disneyland is very strict about what you wear and bring to grad night, which is where you stay up all night at Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, grad night.
I know about
Mark,
some grad nights.
You know about grad night. Grad night is actually miserable in my opinion because there was like no food at all except for like the one McDonald's stand open and the line was like an hour. And we were very, very hungry. And I'm not a big fan of McDonald's anyway. It's not my favorite fast food.
Sure.
So, and after a while, we were just like, by like 4, we were like, okay, we're tired. Please let us go home.
Yeah.
But we did, they will tell you, you can't bring lotion, you can't bring chapstick, you can't bring any kind of water, you can't bring in anything like that. You can't wear red or blue because those are gang colors, no bandanas, no hats, no belts, no clothes that say anything on it.
No belts.
It was because of like,
or like no belts that have
things on it.
Yeah, I think you're describing jail.
Yeah, it
like we
like
take
jail.
the laces out of your shoes.
They put you in a yard. You can play basketball or walk around in a circle or lift weights. And that's Disneyland.
Or ride the Matterhorn.
Like all those prisons that have
like
a
all
Matterhorn.
The prisons, yes. But we, in order to like and our school was small enough that all the seniors could go and they could take a friend. So I actually went my junior year, and then senior year I was like, you know what, I'm good. It wasn't actually that fun last year. I'll go to Disneyland when I can stay awake. But we did a skit that was us just doing the Jet song, the opening number in the Jet song from West Side Story, because all of the things they were telling us were like no gang affiliation things, nothing that can be like, perceived as gangs, nothing, no gang related colors, no gang related this or that. So we were like, gangs, huh? And what are art school kids going to do? Yeah. We thought of West Side Story. So, yeah. And I was action, of course, cause I was, small and angry. And we did like a stage fight and, lip synced. And it was like, where are you going to find Mickey instead of Bernardo? At Disneyland instead of the dance at the gym. But Disneyland is neutral territory. Yeah, we had somebody come in and like lip sync the fake version of that. It was that was very fun.
Well, thank God you didn't have a school officer that happened to know that musical pull you all aside at Disneyland and be like, listen, we said no gang activity. You think I don't know who Officer Krupke is? I know what you're saying behind my back. You think I'm stupid? This is gang activity. Now get out of Disneyland.
That was our favorite thing to do. And then at the end of it, we all just said like what to wear at Disneyland. And that was my favorite all school memory for sure.
Oh, I love that.
The kids loved it. Yeah. So on a completely different topic. So anyway, speaking of boarding schools, let's start talking about England.
Let's go to England.
England has boarding schools. Very different than the US boarding schools, but yeah.
This was among the topics you picked. This is a great one. I love it because there are only 3 films to talk about. Yeah. What made you pick it? Tell us what you love about the Cornetto trilogy.
Okay. Well, I mean, I didn't think that you guys would pick this one for me because I think the other ones that I had at least 1 or 2 other ones I think had to do with musicals. And I was like, they're going to pick one of the musical ones. They're going to pick one of the musical ones. But then I saw this and I was like, oh, pleasantly pleasantly surprised. So I first saw, so there is a gap, actually, because I was at boarding school, there is a gap in my knowledge from like the 2000s. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of movies that I didn't end up seeing around that time. And there were some very classic movies. Like I never saw Mean Girls until college. I didn't see a lot of the movies that came out at that time. And like, I was only vaguely aware of what was happening music wise. Cause, you know, we were on top of a mountain at an arts boarding school and I was, you know, reading Ibsen and listening to Wicked and Avenue Q. So, I didn't
the important
stuff. Yes. So and like Angels in America and stuff like that. And so we had a movie theater in town and it had one screen. I remember seeing Shrek 2 there. I don't remember seeing others. And we had film majors. At our school, but they were edgy teen ones. And so all they ever wanted to watch was like Eraserhead or Requiem for a Dream.
Sure.
So
impossible to watch twice, that movie. Impossible to watch twice.
I mean, I went to art school, so I've seen it. I hung out with some of these people, so I've seen it more than once. And yeah, I don't know why. But there was a lot of, so there were a lot of things that I missed out on and I didn't really pick up on until I went to college. And then when I was in college, I started dating a film major, and an NYU film major is an intense thing. And he was probably like the most good natured. He remains one of the most good natured film majors I've ever met. But we would always go to Kim's Video, which is a famous place in New York, a famous video store. And he had an account there and I would rent movies on his account and we would like, that was our date nights. That is what we would do. And like, I remember once actually, like early on in our relationship, his mom called while the two of us were like hanging out on a date at my place. And she was like, "Oh, Mara's there with you?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And he said, "We're watching The Godfather." And she said, "Oh, honey, horses' heads. That's not exactly romantic." But, you know, when you're dating a film major, that is romantic. So, and I loved it because it's The Godfather and it's perfect. But yeah, we had, so I can't remember when it was, but we rented Shaun of the Dead and I think he had already seen it and we both loved it. And I ended up getting it on DVD. And I remember us also getting Hot Fuzz. And so, and watching that with a friend too, and that just being absurd and ridiculous. And all of them they were just movies that like, you know, that I discovered at like the right time where I was just really a big fan of them. And they were something that they bring back memories. But also, like I've said, like, despite my specificity in sorting laundry, I feel like I mess up a lot on a lot of things. Like I can relate sometimes very heavily to like a dirtbag teenager or like a dirtbag immature guy character in something. People be like, "God, I hate this character. He's so obnoxious." And I'll be like, "Yeah, he is." And also I kind of relate to him. Just like people who can't quite get their act together because the world keeps distracting them. People who feel kind of hapless, who aren't really interested in, or just aren't good at like living things like this. And so I feel like the Cornetto trilogy, there's always somebody at the heart of it who's kind of a screw up. Yeah. And, you know, and they have sort of a very bizarre hero's journey to becoming less of a screw up. I mean, Hot Fuzz takes kind of a different approach to that because Nick Angel is very straight laced. And it's funny because I was also very much like half like goody two shoes, you know, need to please everybody, need to do things by the book, and also a total screw up, which leads to a lot of neuroses in my part.
Sure.
So my long-winded response is happy memories. You know, the shortened version of that is, it's because it brings back happy memories, and also because I often feel like a screw up, and it's nice to see a screw up learning how to, you know, take care of themselves and also save the world.
I love that. That actually leads beautifully into a way that I think, if this sounds good to y'all, that I would love to tackle this. I think this can be broken down because we do have to objectively figure out which of these movies is on the top of Pink Laundry Mountain for this particular episode.
Before you jump in with a method, I'm just curious, and nobody say what your answer is, but I have one of these three that I think is the best one.
I do too.
I look at it. You have one as well? Mark,
Yes.
do you have one? Do you really like, when you look at the three of them, Mark, are you like, I don't know which one I think is the best one, or do you have one?
Honestly, I don't have one. I don't have one that, because they're all so different. They're all they're three different genres. They're three different.
Yeah. The connective tissue is obviously the creative team. You have, you have a lot of recurring cast who come back over and over again outside of the leads.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say what I love about these movies is the same thing that I love about the Thrilling Adventure Hour that I would always tell people about it, which is that Ben and Ben did a really good job of poking fun at genre while also upholding and showing like a love for it. So it wasn't, you can make a parody like Airplane or Police Squad where it's just like off the walls. I'm making fun of everything in this, but they have fun with the zombie genre and the buddy cop genre and the sci-fi alien invasion genre in really fun ways while also making really good zombie and buddy cop.
They're good versions of those things.
Yeah. They're just good movies that also have like a very specific voice to them. And it's what makes them stand out so much.
A friend of mine once told me that is her favorite genre. Is movies that are technically parodies or like pastiches at least, but are good examples of that movie themselves. And I was like, and I told her, I was like, I can't really think of very many movies. And like the first ones that came to mind, I was like, oh, like Shaun of the Dead is a good zombie movie. And she was like, yeah, exactly. She also said like Scream is another example of that.
There's another one.
Blazing Saddles is a good
Galaxy
Western.
Quest. Yeah. Blazing Saddles
Quest
is a good Western.
great,
Yeah. And The Orville, it's a TV show, but it is a fantastic Star Trek show that I'm now watching. I'm in season 2.
I remember my dad and I watched Galaxy Quest on an airplane, and at the end we were like, did we just watch an actually good movie on an airplane? This was back before you could choose the movie.
Yes, this is what you're watching.
Watching movies on airplanes makes me cry. I think it's the altitude and the air. Like more than, I'm like, this movie is, why am I crying at Ryan the Last Dragon so vociferously?
I've cried but then I've watched some very sad movies on airplanes. Like I watched Moonlight on an airplane and oh my God, that was big mistake. Big mistake. Yeah, I was just sobbing hysterically by the end of that. Yeah.
All right. Well, you both have teed up beautifully, I think, the three different criteria we can look at to determine which of these movies comes out on top. I think there will be something that comes out on top from each of these three categories. The first of them, Mara, you were talking before about the themes of immaturity and growing up and a screw up becoming slightly less of a screw up.
Yeah.
That is one topic I would love to cover, is the themes that run throughout them. Another topic that you mentioned, Hal, is the genres themselves and how each of the movies deals with genre. And the third one is, because if we're trying to eliminate as many variables as possible, the third is the characters. Specifically, I'd like to look at Simon Pegg and Nick Frost's characters that they play in each one of them and those relationships. But also, of course, we're going to look at some of the other great actors and characters, Bill Nye showing up multiple times and all the other people that appear multiple times throughout their movies, even in tiny little roles. But which of those criteria would you like to tackle first?
Oh, what do you think, Hal?
Oh, geez. Do you want to talk about, the genres are so different. I'm kind of interested to have that conversation because they're all so, like, I'm drawn to one genre over the others, although I enjoy them all to different degrees. So it's almost kind of hard to judge. Like, I've watched some zombie films, but Shaun of the Dead is by far my favorite.
Yeah.
Because it has heart to it. I care about the characters. I think the ending is really fun and surprising. Like, it finds a way to make it frightening without me wanting to turn it off. Yeah. Which is really solid.
I think it also does the best version, or it is a great zombie movie because there are zombie movie tropes that Shaun of the Dead has that I would argue that there's at least one example of it having the best version of that trope, which is I'm reluctant to kill this person that is important to me because they've just been turned into a zombie, but I know I have to do it. That's
going to come back in Hot Fuzz also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. But the stop pointing that gun at my mom is one of the most gut wrenching moments. Like, that's in a really funny movie. it's hard to watch. Like it nails the pathos that goes along with a zombie movie, I think, in that regard. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, it does. And there is a sadness in it. You know, there's a sadness inherent in that, and the idea of loss and the idea of everything changing. I don't know if I've watched it since the pandemic began. And I wonder if it might be a little harder to watch.
It's different after a pando.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's still funny. Like, I still think of lines from it all the time. Just like I watched Hot Fuzz recently. Mm-hmm. I've watched Hot Fuzz during the pandemic, but there's so many lines in there that are so funny that I just think about all the time, or little moments that are so funny. Like when they hit somebody with a car, and then they find out it's a zombie, and Sean just goes, "Oh, thank God!" And they drive away.
All of these scripts pop.
Yeah.
There's so many great jokes and gags and bits in them. Like them trying to pick which of the records. They have to throw these records to kill the zombies and knock their heads off. But they're not going to throw Purple Rain. They're going to throw Batman.
Yeah, there was the Stone Roses' Second Coming. I like it. Yeah. My brother says that that's one of his favorite lines in a movie because he also likes that album and he doesn't know very many people who do. I actually like it too. I do too.
Do y'all know about this? This was a fun thing I found out about the different Cornetto, the 3 flavors and how they connect to the genres.
Yes.
Have you heard this? For those who don't know.
I think I have, but remind me.
The first movie, it is strawberry Cornetto ice cream because of the bloodbath that is a zombie movie.
Yeah.
The second movie, Hot Fuzz, is the regular blue label because to represent the police force, the boys in blue. And then the third movie is Mint Chip because of Little Green Men, since it is an alien.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't really see much Cornetto ice cream in the third movie.
Well, you see a rapper.
You see the rapper right that rapper at the end that
goes away.
But it is Mint Chip, that rapper that blows up at the end.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little about the zombie genre. The genre for Hot Fuzz is, I guess, just cop movie?
Or it's buddy cop.
It's buddy cop.
It's mismatched partners.
Yeah.
Because it's all, when in a buddy cop film, by and large, you have one person who's really good at their job and one person who's really bad at their job or has washed out or is unfit to be a police officer for some reason or the other. So you have Sergeant Nicholas Angel. I love how many levels Hot Fuzz has. Is they're doing Point Break. They're doing Lethal Weapon. They're doing just like a number of different crime films. It's a really good mystery, first of all. The cast is incredible, including Jim Broadbent and Timothy
Dalton.
Oh my God. So good. In addition, this is where Patty Considine joins and he's great.
I love Olivia Colman in this too, who talks exclusively in double entendres. Yeah.
So good. But I like each movie has a what if. So like the first is, what if the hero of a zombie apocalypse was just a guy who's done nothing with his life? Like he's just the worst equipped person to deal with it. The part of the what if of this is, what if the person who was the super cop was hated by every other cop because he's so obnoxious? Like they can't just relax. They can't do stuff on their own timeline. The scene of him getting transferred where it keeps going up the ladder, Martin Freeman and Bill Nye, like it's such a great piece of them transferring him to this village just to get rid of him. And then he winds up in the center of a major crime and has to partner up with Nick Frost's PC Danny Butterman, who is a terrible police officer that loves cop movies. Is there because of his dad.
One of the most fun games I've seen an actor get to play. Like him, he is the voice of that genre. Like this is the cop movie genre, and Nick Frost is reminding us of all of the tropes that we need to love in a cop movie. Right down to Point Break, just shooting the gun in the air with the screaming and it's so good. And then when they finally have that bad boys spin around shot in the third act where it's a delightful use of the genre.
And also incredibly violent, like sneaky violent.
Yeah, that was something I was blown away by that the first time that I saw it. I was like, this is the most violent movie I have watched in a while. Yeah. Like it is very violent, but it's also comically violent because like I know how we've talked about this before. Like I'm not good with horror movies.
Right.
And I'm not particularly good with violence in movies either. I get that like that thing where it's like you imagine it happening to you in a way. Yeah. Like if I see somebody get kicked in the stomach or stabbed in the stomach, I'm like, my stomach. Wait, that's not me. Yeah. I don't know. I like over empathize with it. So like slasher movies are not really my forte. But the violence in this it's almost comical. I mean, it is comical, but it's also because he's sort of come from this weird, this world like London, which is very much like very strict and very, it's a very by the book, by the rules kind of place.
Yeah. And fast paced.
Very fast paced. And I mean, or at least, London is not, okay, let me rephrase that. London is not a by the book place, but the, Metropolitan Police Force is a place where you kind of have to be by the book.
Yeah.
And I think it's also like, I think the most British friends I know would say that out of the three of these, Hot Fuzz is their favorite because they all know a village like that.
Yeah.
They all know. I mean, you have like not one, but two songs from the Kinks, Village Green Preservation Society playing in this movie. So it's very, it's very much like everybody's like, oh yeah, I either lived in that village or that's the village that, my mom grew up in, or that's the village that, my gran lived in or something. It's all, everybody knows that kind of a village. But I think a lot of people who grew up in small towns know a little bit of that too, know a little bit of that, that kind of life.
Like American small town, like Americans that grew up in their small towns.
Yeah, like if you grew up in the Midwest, everybody has the story about like a swan or a goose needing to be taken away, or
like a seaside New England village. Like New England's very full of that. But yeah, any small town has some like runaway animal that nobody can get a hold of.
Yeah, that you need to get a hold of.
Last time I was home visiting, or last time I was in Greenwood visiting my mom, I got cornered by one of her friends who just had to tell me the story about the big pig scandal in the courtroom when someone brought their pig into the courtroom to make a point. And I love that town. It's delightful for reasons like that. Like, yes, of course, Stephen Merchant loses a swan. Yes. Or what's his name in it? It's like, it's like a Bart Simpson calling Moe's Tavern name that he has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about then our third movie in the trilogy, and that is The World's End, which is our alien invasion movie. You want to talk violence, even though the blood in these movies is blue. Boy, is there a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And they get to have some insane fun with the violence in this one because once someone is dead, they're not dead for long. I kind of love that they keep getting up, reattaching their limbs. They're like He-Man figures. Like you just pop the legs off, but that rubber band's going to pull them back together again. And now it's some ladies coming at you with legs for arms. And I love the violence in that movie. It's so fun. But let's talk about the genre of the invasion.
Well, I didn't know, because I wasn't sure I didn't actually know, like I knew Shaun of the Dead was a zombie movie.
Yeah.
And I knew it would be, because of the title. I knew Hot Fuzz was a cop movie because, the fuzz. I wasn't sure what The World's End was going to be when I saw it. I didn't know what it was going to be. So I was just like, okay, is this like, I was like, I know it's going to go in a weird direction any minute now. What weird direction is it going to go in?
It's like From Dusk Till Dawn in that way, in that it's 40 full minutes before any alien anything happens. They're on like they've already got the plan. We've met all the characters. They're already on the pub crawl and like halfway through it before we see this alien thing happen for the first time.
Which is also smart because you need to let those relationships happen. Like Gary King is this sad alcoholic.
Yeah.
He's trying to recapture something that he never really had. And then his best friend, Andy, feels this tremendous guilt that's caused him to not drink at all. But he comes along because he's manipulated by Gary, who says his mom is dying. Like, just like once you get to know these characters, they're really good at creating stakes through character. And also
personal stakes.
And this film is certainly no exception. Edgar Wright as a director is so good at playing around with the camera work of the genre. And he does it my favorite version of it is in Hot Fuzz, because they have that sequence that's in every action film of people loading the guns and putting it in the holster. But he's checking into the hotel and giving his card and getting the key and putting it in the lock. Like he used it, like overused it to really good effect. And that's happening in all three of these films.
He does a great job of taking the least important moments and being like, we might as well, like the guy's got to check into a hotel. We can either write a scene about him checking into a hotel, or we can do a bit of him checking into a hotel. Ding,
with the guitar that.
Or drinks being poured, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But let's talk about getting back to the genre of the alien invasion. This might, to me, have been, just because it comes in so late, and you even mentioned, like, what genre is this? It doesn't feel like the genre is as much a part of this movie. It feels way more about the characters in this movie.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more like a reunion movie in a way. Yeah, it feels a bit more like that. And interestingly, I think, I think that this is something you can see in any like writer or director or like group of people filmmakers. I mean, this is kind of a group that works on these films, I would say. You can see this in sort of the progression, just because we all grow up and we all age. But I mean, like, Shaun of the Dead is about kind of that sort of delayed, adolescence continuing on into your late 20s and like settling down and trying to get like a job and a relationship. And Hot Fuzz is like, okay, you have a job, maybe you have a relationship, but maybe the job isn't going the way that you want. The relationship isn't going the way that you want. You're moving, you're changing. And then, The World's End is sort of like looking back on your life after you've gotten to these points, once you've gotten somewhere, and sort of trying to figure it out. So it does feel sort of like a progression. And I mean, it's maybe because, I don't think 10 years passed between these movies being made, but
no,
it was 03, 07, and 13. 04, I'm sorry, 04, 07, and 13. Yeah.
But that is sort of one feels more like your 20s, one feels more like, your early 30s, another one feels like your late 30s, or your 40s. Like, that's kind of the way that they feel, the structured, I think. But yeah, it doesn't feel, it does feel, but I mean, I guess you could also say like Shaun of the Dead, I tell people, is my favorite romantic comedy.
Zomrom.
Because it is. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. And Hot Fuzz is a mystery as well as a, buddy cop movie. And I guess, admittedly, I haven't seen as many buddy cop movies, but not all of them are mysteries. Sometimes it's very straightforward who they're.
Yeah. We have seen from the very beginning this coke dealer in Miami, and that's who we have to get. Yeah.
You're watching them put together what you already know, and you're hoping that they get it done in time because there's a ticking clock, as opposed to a well-crafted mystery where you're kept, which Knives Out is, where you're playing along trying to solve the mystery. Along with,
well, I mean, Rian Johnson is another person who another filmmaker who loves film, and unlike most filmmakers, isn't just like, just has like the couple, like he just loves film. He loves all kinds of film, which is why, like, his newest movie is probably going to be a lot like, The Last of Sheila or and Agatha Christie and all of these things. And,
I love that you mentioned The Last of Sheila. That is my favorite Agatha Christie adaptation. And it's one of the only mystery movies I ever saw where at the end of it, when the big reveal happens, where I actually went, I was sitting with my buddies watching it, and I actually went, oh my God, I watched that happen and I can't believe I didn't clock it. You know what I mean?
Wait, was The Last of Sheila an Agatha Christie?
Yeah, it's 10 Little Indians, but on a boat with James Corbin, and I mean, that cast is crazy. James Mason, Coburn, not James Coburn, James Mason, you know who wrote that, right?
Yeah, Stephen Sondheim.
Amazing. Stephen Sondheim wrote a non-musical movie.
Always comes back to musicals,
right?
And actually, I know Edgar Wright has said like that The Last of Sheila is one of his favorite movies as well.
It's so fun. If you haven't seen it, anybody out there,
it's so perfectly crafted. Perfectly crafted. Yeah.
Well, which one of these has a perfectly crafted genre? Who handles genre the best of these three? Someone's got to come out on top in this category.
I think it's.
I would argue Hot Fuzz. Okay.
I think it's Hot Fuzz. I think it nails three different subgenres of cop movie all at once, and it weaves in the idea of Danny Butterman, like Danny calling stuff out. And then it happening. Sometimes it allows us to move away from the expectation. Sometimes it's setting up something that's going to happen later sometimes it's set up to a payoff. Sometimes it's to move us in a different direction, but it's a really good guide to what's happening. And the fact that I remember those camera moves so well, and Shaun of the Dead is a lot of like good jump scare, like sort of weird jump scare moments in it that are great. But I think Hot Fuzz it's like straight down the barrel of so many different things. Doesn't drop a plate.
I'm kind of torn between Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead for this, because I think that it's interesting because, I mean, I don't know if zombie movies really exist in the Shaun of the Dead, or they do. Like somebody mentions zombies and somebody's like, I don't call them that, but that's like the only reference that you get. Whereas in Hot Fuzz, they definitely do exist. And so they're acknowledging those tropes, and they're acknowledging that the characters are acknowledging the tropes as well. Whereas in Shaun of the Dead, they aren't. So that I think is interesting. And so for a while I was going to say it's definitely Shaun of the Dead but then I don't really think that knowing about these things and being aware of them takes away from it also being a genre, because I think it helps. Yeah, well, Scream is another example of that. Even though Scream's not like my favorite movie, but it's that is something that is being meta and is acknowledging it and is doing that. But yeah, I do think that it can help. And I feel like meta humor to me is like, it's like salt or like or not salt. I'm trying to think of something where no, because it's
truffle oil.
Small dose truffle oil. Okay, truffle oil is a good one. Yes, truffle oil is a good one. I think like if you put a little bit of truffle oil on popcorn, that's great, and it like brings out the nice, it blends with the popcorn. But I don't want to drink a cup of truffle oil.
No, you will shrink indefinitely forever into the metaverse.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
That's how you do it.
Yes. So I think that it needs to be used sparingly. I think that meta jokes need to be used sparingly. And I know, and I don't know if it's just because I saw a lot of comedy groups in my 20s and in my college years and 20s and also just like the humor at the time was very self-referential, Adult Swim, that kind of thing. When it wasn't just weird, it was all just meta jokes. And I just got so tired of that. And I was just like, this doesn't make me feel smarter, that I got the joke. It just makes me feel annoyed. But I think that you can have, you can have a pastiche. You can have this thing where you have awareness of the genre, sort of literally and figuratively. And within it, have the characters acknowledge themselves. And it is really funny that, Nicholas Angel has to learn by watching, Bad Boys 2 and watching all of these movies.
You bring up a good point is I think a lot of meta, a thing that I can find annoying about meta is the ironic detachment of it. And I think there's no detachment in the meta of Hot Fuzz. In fact, it's because the characters care. I think the genre itself propels the decisions that the characters make.
Yeah.
It moves the plot forward. Nick Frost in that movie, the genre is what leads that character down every path he goes down. And they ultimately win in the end because of it. Yeah.
I took a friend to a premiere once. I'm going somewhere with this. And they were so excited because they'd never been to one before. And it wasn't a premiere for like a movie I'd worked on in any way. It was as an adult, I got invited to it. And they'd never been to a premiere, and they were asking me so many questions. They were like, have you ever been to like, are premieres usually held here? Do I have to dress up? How do I have to dress up? Have you ever been to this kind of premiere? Do they serve food at premieres? Is it like this? And eventually they just like stopped and they were like, I sound just like Nick Frost and Hot Fuzz right now, don't I?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. And started doing like,
save the day. Save the day like Nick Frost and Hot Fuzz.
Yes, exactly.
Also, do you ever fire two guns whilst jumping through the air?
All right. Are we comfortable saying that Hot Fuzz wins the genre battle?
I think it might. I think so.
Well, let's take a quick break. We've got 2 more categories to talk about. But in the meantime, please let us tell you about some of the other great shows on the Maximum Fun Network, and we will be right back.
Hello, dreamers. This is Evelyn Denton, CEO of the only world-class, fully immersive theme resort, Steeplechase. I've been seeing more and more reports on the blogs that our beloved park simply isn't safe anymore.
Murder them?
I'm gonna wreck it. They say they got mugged by brigands in the fantasy kingdom of Ephemera, or hijacked by space pirates in Infinitum.
I mean, I could have a knife.
My papa said that I needed to do a crime. Friends, I'm here to reassure you that it's all part of the show. These criminals were really just overzealous staff trying to make things a little more magical for our guests. We're just as safe as we've always been. This isn't a county fair, dreamers. This is Steeplechase,
the Adventure Zone. Every Thursday at MaximumFun.org.
Since the dawn of time, man has dreamed of bringing life back from the dead. From Orpheus and Eurydice to Frankenstein's monster, resurrection has long been merely the stuff of myth, fiction, and fairy tale. Until now. Actually, we still can't bring people back from the dead. That would be crazy, but the Dead Pilot Society podcast has found a way to resurrect great dead comedy pilots from Hollywood's finest writers. Every month, Dead Pilot Society brings you a reading of a comedy pilot that was sold and developed but never produced, performed by the funniest actors from film and television. How does Dead Pilot Society achieve this miracle? The answer can only be found at MaximumFun.org.
And we're back. What do you guys want to jump into next? The themes or the characters?
Let's see. I guess characters, right?
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, I think that we have sort of talked about themes.
Yeah, the themes have we've kind of been going through that. We'll finish up on the themes at the end. We'll wrap it all up with that, and that'll be our dessert.
Yeah.
But let's talk about these characters because they are very different. You look at Simon Pegg. In the first one, he's stoner assistant manager who has to save the world. Yeah. The second one, he's stuck, stick in the mud cop who has to save the town. And then the third one, he's, I think, playing the most against type in the third one.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely doing the most interesting work in the third one as the guy that can't grow up. They're all
Nick
the guys.
Nick Frost is an interesting character in that one. I think
Nick Frost is
fascinating in
Andy.
that.
Yeah.
So, and we've got, going from Shaun of the Dead, you've got stoner best friend Nick Frost, you've got cop aficionado Nick Frost, and then, you've got Andy, the recovered alcoholic best friend who really loves the guy, but is like secret. He's got a million things going on. It's a fun, I think Nick Frost's arc is the most fun in World's End.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that.
But who are you guys drawn to?
Let's see. I think I relate to Sean in some ways because I also feel like kind of hapless and out of control of my life a lot of the time. Sure. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I've also related to Nick Angel in a way in that I can be very sort of rigid in my thinking and very much like this is the right way to do something. And when people don't automatically know the right way to do something as I see it, I can be very annoyed.
Sure.
So personally, I relate to those. And also, but also The World's End. I mean, I stopped drinking because of a health condition a couple years ago, and it is weird and does take a lot of strength to go into a bar and just get water. I will say that is the thing that I actually think about a lot from that movie is, and people will be like, well, people will be offering you drinks. People will be, and I mean, it's not, I think it's less of an issue if you're a woman. It's not as much like a masculinity thing, but people will sometimes be like this. And I'll be like, well, look, if I have alcohol, I will faint and I will end up in the hospital and I don't want that to happen. But you also you don't owe anybody your explanations, you also don't owe anybody that, but it also leads to like guilt and confusion and so many things. So I think that all of these characters are very relatable in a way. I think that is something, I mean, I was going to say that I think Shaun of the Dead has the best ensemble, but then I thought about it again and I remembered Olivia Colman, love of my life, showing up in Hot Fuzz. And I was like, okay, I don't know about that. And also The World's End has a good ensemble from the very beginning too. So
it's funny. They all have the ensemble. They kind of use the same people within the ensemble.
Yeah.
Multiple times. But Hot Fuzz is an all-star cast. Like they brought it's like all of England's heavy hitters. It's like a Harry Potter movie with just every major British, killer actor is.
Are we going to confess at some point which one is our favorite, or are we keeping that inside?
We can say it at the end if you want. You can say it right now if you want.
Okay. Well, because I know which one is my favorite, and I don't know if it's everybody's favorite, but I mean, I guess we can wait till the end.
Right on.
And talk about it at that. How do you feel about that now?
Yeah. I mean, part of me.
Because I'm like, do I argue for my favorite or do I argue for what I think is,
I feel like we're spending time in the categories, which I know you like, Mark, as a way to settle the score. But
I'm just trying to put some kind of structure to.
Right. There is a part of me that wants.
Oh, now I see who is the Nick Angel of this podcast.
Yeah. There's a part of me that wants to.
I'm the
Nicholas
play-by-play, and Hal is the color man.
Which is why I love Danny Butterman. So I love all the characters in all these films. There's a bit of us in all of them. There's a bit of us trying to recapture something like a former glory or complete something like, oh, if I'd only done this thing when I was younger, everything would have been different. But I'm going to pin everything back to that and obsess on it. Like we all have some part of that.
And it's also funny how that is, it was just a pub crawl, and that means so much to you. And I mean, I started this, but then like you think about the things that meant a lot to you at one point in your life. And I mean, God knows we talked about show choir and a cappella groups and like community theater, like those kinds of things. I look back on that and I'm like, that was my life for how long?
But it was important when when that's what you were doing. It was very important.
Yeah, it was the most important thing.
Yeah. And to Gary King, this pub crawl is still the most important thing, even though it's 20 years later for everybody.
It's his unfinished business.
I will say one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when this group of people who are all like in their 30s and 40s are walking in slow motion to Suede's So Young.
Oh, it's so good.
Which is, because we're young and none of them are young anymore. Yeah.
But they're holding their own. They hold their own all night.
They are.
They make it.
Yeah. But that song is about, being 19. It's not about being,
It's a bunch 35. Of Buscemi's with a skateboard over their shoulder.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, none of them are old, but they're not, the hot young things that Suede was singing about.
They're not the kids that they were. They're far enough away from it.
But talking about these guys and getting back to the characters and the ensemble specifically, one thing I think that The World's End suffered from, for me, and I'm curious if you guys had the same reaction to it. You mentioned the Shaun of the Dead ensemble they're all so distinct and different that there's even a scene in it when they meet their zombie survival team doppelgangers that they all cross paths. Like they're such defined characters in that. I feel like World's End, the first half of the movie, it's just Gary King and then the straight-laced representation of grown-ups who is played by 4 different guys. You know what I mean? Well, like they're all basically playing the same guy until later on they all get their individual moments.
I would argue that that's kind of what that Hot Fuzz is a little bit like that at first too. That
with the village,
the ensemble, the village and the ensemble, I feel like kind of comes together more towards the middle and to the end as they're doing it. But so I don't think that that's like a problem. Whereas I feel like most of the main characters in Shaun of the Dead are there from the very first scene. The ensemble is there from the very first scene. It is revealed to be an ensemble piece.
I think the ensemble is better in Shaun of the Dead, but I think Nick Frost and Simon Pegg's characters are more interesting in Hot Fuzz and The World's End.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What do you think, Hal?
I agree with you. I think Hot Fuzz because you add in Olivia Colman and Jim Broadbent.
You've got that crazy.
Timothy Dalton.
And Timothy Dalton. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that is a killer. You almost don't subtract anything. You know, to Peter Serafinowicz, he takes a break. He's only in the 2 bookends, but you do have this murderer's row. You have Bill Bailey as well, but you have multiple Oscar winners. In that cast. Yeah. And they're great.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying, like, I know you have your categories, but I also had the same thing. It's like, I know the one that's my favorite.
We'll get there.
But no. I'm just
we have
saying,
we have one more category to get to.
And I'm ready to argue for it. I know we'll do your categories. Don't worry.
Don't condescend to me. So wait,
who won this category? Who won this? Who won
Hot Fuzz? Hot Fuzz has already won the episode if we're just doing it by this. But
okay. Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah.
But we've covered a lot of the themes already. The themes pervasive throughout obviously are growing up, maturing, and the obstacles to maturity, whether internal or external. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
And I would.
Who handles that the best?
Well, it's also relationships.
Yeah.
And not just romantic relationships. Although actually, I mean, Hot Fuzz doesn't really have a romantic relationship.
No.
Unless you count the affair and the Romeo and no, like the Romeo and Juliet, right. But there isn't really a love story in it unless you count the bromance. But so many of them are about relationships with friends. not necessarily romantic relationships, which is another thing that I like, because I like when we acknowledge, friendships, and friendships being as interesting as romantic relationships, and friend breakups and moving on from friends, and how difficult that can be. I think that is something, that we don't talk about and you don't see a lot in movies. So that is something that I appreciate about all of them, really.
Yeah. I think World's End tackles that particularly well.
They do. The falling apart from friends and the coming back into contact with friends. And I think it probably handles it the best, I would say. But I think that plot wise, I think that Shaun of the Dead has the biggest arc for Shaun, I would say, because he has to grow up. It's kind of, it's not quite a hero's journey, but it is a journey, and it is him. And that's the thing also, is that something chaotic, something scary, something traumatizing. These things do make you grow up in a way. And what you need is a community to help and support you. And people tend to, I think, fare better. I don't know. I'm not like a psychologist or psychiatrist. This is just what I feel like. People tend to fare better with like really heavy, hard, traumatic things when they've got a support system around them, when they've got people around them. And that's kind of what they have there, and what he has, and what he finds, and what he builds. Even though people are being picked off around him, he's finding, the strength in himself and the strength in the community around him, I think. So I think that has the clearest arc. Whereas the other two, I feel like I love them, but they do feel like they go from being one kind of movie to another kind of movie.
Yeah.
I feel like Shaun of the Dead has the clearest arc out of the three of them.
I think so.
But in terms of character development and change, I don't know if that's quite, I don't know. It might be a little bit different. It might be one of the other ones too. Yeah.
It makes sense. It's interesting. I'm wondering if you guys would agree with this. I think that Shaun of the Dead, Sean's got to muster his bravery to move forward in the world. And so he's got to be brave enough to embrace the future. I think in World's End, Gary King has to be brave enough to say goodbye to the past, which are two different things. You know what I mean? And he does that. By the end, he does that. Simon Pegg's a great actor, and he is brilliant in all three of these movies. I don't think there's much of I think Hot Fuzz is just fun. You know what I mean? I think there's less. Yeah, there's less of the arc of maturity in Hot Fuzz.
In some ways there is, because it's about learning how to let go. In some ways, it's about learning how to let go a little bit, and not to be perfect, and to learn from your friends. And also, it is kind of also a movie about like, there is also the sort of the genre of going from like a big, it's sort of almost like the stereotypical like Hallmark or Lifetime movies, where it's like, big city woman goes to a tiny village and falls in love with it. And there's a little bit of that as well. It's if instead of a romance, it was a bromance, a friendship movie, then then you do have that. I think that there is that kind of arc in it as well. But I think that you are correct that both that the bookends have a much, stronger arc.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned too that the only one of these that has a love story is Shaun of the Dead. A real, like, meaty love story is Shaun of the Dead. And that, I think, is a huge part of storytelling, is having that love story, like a actual, like relationship, romantic love story as well. And that's the only one of them. But that said, the love story of World's End is Andy and Gary. It's their love. It's the friendship love story you're talking about.
Isn't there Gary's old girlfriend in there?
There is. The girl that he slept with will always have the disabled restroom.
Yes, right.
Jeez. Horrifying.
Oh no, that's terrible.
But it becomes the like love story is between his buddy when he comes out and he's like, oh, always.
Well, you could argue that is Shaun of the Dead too. The way that it ends is literally, with Queen playing,
Yeah. Oh, that Queen. Yeah. Oh my God. theme wise, are there any that stand out? Like, not that we have to necessarily pick one. These are just topics I wanted to make sure that we covered.
I thought you were keeping score of these.
No. It's not like a scoring thing. I just wanted to talk about them.
No, let's get into this.
No faith. Yeah.
We did the homework. We ate the salad in the main course. Let's have dessert.
Yeah.
My brother made a GIF a couple years ago of Nicholas Angel being offered cake. And with the cake, being shaken by his head, and he just looks to the side and says, "No, thanks." And that's we're eating the cake. Yeah. And the ice cream that's right.
All right.
That he brought.
Do you want to reveal now, Mara, what your choice was coming in?
Yes, I have. I mean, I'm even, like I said, I'm representing it on my shirt. It's Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is my favorite.
Yeah.
The Shaun of the Dead is my favorite. It's not everybody's favorite, but it's mine. I just think it's so solid. And I mean, I love all of them, but it's just so solid and so perfectly crafted, I think. And there are a lot of bad romantic comedies out there, but I think that it's a good one. And I think that it's just so funny. There are so many funny lines in it. And I also I think that there just like isn't a moment spared. Everything is done so efficiently, and so everything just, I don't know, it just coalesces into this perfect thing, I think. Yeah. And every line is a reference to something else. It's just incredibly tight and dead on. And also I'm a big wuss, so I appreciate a horror movie being made funny.
Yeah. And it's like the horror movie is happening in the theater next to you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like you're watching a romantic comedy, but you're on screen 7. Screen 8 is playing a zombie movie.
And that's also a thing, because I always feel like I'm kind of distracted by the wrong thing. I'm always paying attention to the wrong thing. And that is another way in which this movie, I'm like, I'm more of a catastrophizer than Sean is. So I don't think that I would let a zombie apocalypse. I would be reading the news, obsessing over that right away. But I do feel like a lot of times big things happen and I'm just like, oh crap, where was I? What just something just happened and I just totally missed it. Crap. So yeah, I can relate to that personally.
I like that. He's very everyman. That thought of like, what would I do in this situation?
For sure.
Because he finds himself in the situation. He doesn't put himself in the situation the way they do in World's End.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Or they're not, he just is, it happens, the world happens to him. He's Buster Keaton.
Yeah. I had an argument with my college boyfriend about whether or not I would fare well in a zombie apocalypse. He was like, "You're so anxious."
What did you think you'd do?
Now I think I disagree, but at the time I was like, no, I would be out there. I would be in the trenches. I would be fighting. And my boyfriend was like, "I don't know. You're like such an anxious person." And I was like, "How dare you? I'm good in a crisis." And he was like, "Well, yeah, but he was like, "Well, I would be hiding too." And I was like, "Yes, but this is a very just war that we're fighting here." And yeah, I would be out there with a crowbar. I would get one of those like padded bras from Victoria's Secret, put that over my head because they're really, really hard. There's like layers of foam there. It's very, very hard to do that.
Yeah,
you can't bite into that. Put a helmet over that. Yeah, get a crowbar or a basket or a baseball bat. And you can tell how great I am with sports because I almost said basketball bat. Yeah. And I would be out there in the trenches. Now, of course, having lived through a pandemic, I'm like, maybe not. But I was so insulted that he said that but I feel like Shaun of the Dead gave me some hope in some ways. Like, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, anybody could do. If this
anybody
guy
could do this.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know what? I would pick you to be on my zombie survival team because that level of precision and attention to detail means that you would probably be the one that thought to put a first aid kit in her backpack.
No.
That's true. I mean, I practically have one in my backpack already. So
there you go.
Yeah.
What do you think, Hal? Do you have a favorite?
Well, I agree with Mara. One of the greatest feats that Shaun of the Dead pulled off was making me watch a zombie film and enjoy it and go, this is a great zombie movie. That is a very impressive feat.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's even more impressive to take a movie that everybody's seen 8 million times that has a wider appeal. I don't think zombies have the same appeal. There's a reason why it practically doubled the global box office of the other two movies. So to take a film that everybody has seen done 1 billion times and somehow using all of the same beats, make it feel fresh and new and create like bizarre characters that also have a humanity to them. Like it's in some ways feels like the most oddball in terms of like, this would never happen, but they craft the reality in such a well-balanced way that you go, there's nothing in this film that wouldn't happen in this world. So I just think Hot Fuzz is a perfect movie. And
I thought you were talking about Shaun of the Dead.
No, to achieve that after we've been through 4 Lethal Weapons, we've been through Die Hard with a Vengeance, we've been through Point Break twice.
My brother was in a cop buddy movie, sort of.
Really?
He was in Turner and Hooch.
Turner and Hooch is a cop buddy movie. It's absolutely. And Canine. Even that's been done multiple times. Yeah. The Dog as a Partner has been done multiple times.
Yeah.
So to go into really well-worn, widely, globally popular territory and be able to plant a flag like that is so impressive. And it is the movie of these 3 that I have watched the most. Yeah. I've come back to it and I really I loved Shaun of the Dead. I was blown away by it. I was blown away by Hot Fuzz. I really liked The World's End, but it didn't hit me the same way. And Hot Fuzz is the one I've come back to over and over again. And it's just, the mystery of it being as well crafted as it is what pushes it over the edge for me, that they actually managed to make a well crafted mystery.
Yeah.
I will say that every time I watch Hot Fuzz, probably every time I watched any of these movies, something about them surprises me. But I do feel like every time I watch Hot Fuzz, I'm like, because it was so violent that for a while, I was like, I don't know if I can watch that again soon.
Yeah, right.
But then I just felt like I'd learned, so much. I had learned, or not learned so much, but like I just noticed so many more things every time I watch it.
Yeah. I mean, it even turns into Heat at one point. When they have the shootout in the village square, it's basically like turning into Heat. So there are a million reasons why that film should be an absolute failure. And they pull it off I'm so impressed by it. And that's because I was expecting it to be like, oh, this will be pretty good. But I really like Shaun of the Dead. And I've seen a ton of cop movies, so there's nothing that's going to surprise me. I won't be surprised in that same way.
Okay. I'm recording a podcast, but it's okay. We're allowed to talk. Do you have a favorite of the Cornetto trilogy?
What's that?
Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End? Because that's what we're talking about on the podcast.
Why am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. It's that Shaun of the Dead is my favorite, and I have a feeling that everybody else is going to say Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, so that means you're wrong.
Sorry about that. My sister just came home and she says it's Hot Fuzz. She says Hot Fuzz is her favorite. It's the best and it's her favorite. That's what she says. And she says that I'm wrong.
What?
Because she's my sister and that's what siblings say.
Sure. Whichever one you picked, she was going to pick a different one.
Just to wrap up my thread and tie a knot on it.
Yes.
I didn't expect it was going to be able to surprise me. And it did a ton of times. And I'm blown away by it. That's why I think it is the best one. It is also my favorite one. So I am for sure biased.
Here's my only curiosity is going back to what we were talking about with the themes. It's really, really fun, but I don't know that I care about the characters in Hot Fuzz as much as of the lead characters as I do the characters in Shaun of the Dead and The World's End.
That's because, a good point.
You know what I mean? Like Nick Angel is always Nick Angel. Yes, he has his sort of like, oh, this guy's not so bad after all. But there's an element. I don't know. I guess I think the other ones dive more into, if looking at the whole thing as a trilogy, it feels a bit like an outlier. Aside from thematically, it feels like an outlier.
There are some heartbreaking moments in the other two. I don't think there are any heartbreaking moments in Hot Fuzz. It's fun and it's action.
I mean, I don't want to spoil it. It's been out for 15 years, so maybe that's impossible to do. But the relationship between Danny and his father is an important relationship.
Him and his father. What
they do is they spend all this time creating these quirky characters, and then when the big turn happens, like you sort of figure out who's on whose side and maybe why. Like he's a fish out of water. You don't really have a fish out of water. The fish is in their water, just the water gets changed in the other two films. This is Nicholas Angel going from the high octane world of London law enforcement to a small village.
Right.
Where it seems like nothing's happening. And yet, like, I get it. There is a detachment to it, but I think it's very much on purpose. And I think there is a strong emotional core to it. I think it's more the relationship between Danny and his father than Danny and Nicholas, although that's a really important relationship too.
That's true. Actually, the first time I watched it, I remember being like, oh no, not his dad. So yeah, I guess you're right that that is a very emotional moment.
And he's lost he's a widower, and that's driving him. So there is there is a deep loss in that film that we just don't get to see. That's been dealt with in 100% the wrong way and has created this bizarre murder cult.
Well, it's all about the greater good.
It's all, the greater good.
The greater good.
So, I think I saw that written on a wall in Pasadena once, or just something. No, I saw something that said like the greater good, and there was graffiti or something, or maybe even like a signpost. There was something that said the greater good, and I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, and you got to get out of the quaint village of Pasadena quickly.
Man,
Pasadena can be at times. Well, multiple cults have been started in Pasadena, so
sure.
There's a lot of room.
Sign me up. Where are my keys?
Plenty of sprawl there. There's a lot of space to really get your ranch going.
A lot of sprawl and a lot of
get your ranch going.
Yeah.
What's the next Spawn Ranch is going to be in Pasadena? You heard it here first.
There really have been. So it wouldn't surprise me. And there is like sort of a Nancy Reagan-esque quality to like the South Pasadena wealth and like the houses that are perfectly manicured and all of that stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was a Hot Fuzz like cult happening in Pasadena.
Something insidious under the surface.
In addition to like Jack Parsons, sex occult ones.
Yes.
So what are we thinking? We're looking.
I don't know, Mark. Do you want to break the tie? As much as I love Sean, I can't extract myself right now from Hot Fuzz because not only do I love it, but probably similar to Mara, I'm like, oh, well, the things that I love about it are what make it the best film. Like I'm locked into what it is. I don't expect Mara to change her mind. She probably doesn't expect me to change mine. So that means, Mark, you have to step in the middle and make the decision.
Well, then if it's my decision, you can't
cut the movies in half.
If I'm going to cut, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut each of these movies in half, and like the arms and legs getting reattached in the third movie that's no longer going to get mentioned, I'm going to run at you with my Hot Fuzz body and my Shaun of the Dead weird leg arms waving. No, I think for a couple of reasons, I'll give a couple of reasons, and then the one that I think is the ultimate winner. Sure. One, the themes. I like the through line themes that Shaun of the Dead deals with. Mm-hmm. I love the ensemble and the use of tropes. I think that I mentioned it on the show before. I think Hot Fuzz is doing an elevated version of a lot of the details of the genre work that Shaun of the Dead did. But I think as far as the heart goes, I think Shaun of the Dead has more heart to it in the main characters. And also, because I will, as we often do on the show, defer to our illustrious guest as well. And tie goes to the guest.
Sure.
So I will have to say Shaun of the Dead.
Well, people of the world, do yourself a favor if you haven't seen these three films. See these three films. See them in the order they were released. Start with Shaun of the Dead.
I do think most people I know. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I do think most people I know would say Hot Fuzz. I think that's right. I think that.
listen.
I mean, my sister did. My sister just walked in and said that it was her favorite.
Make no mistake. This was a gross miscarriage of justice, but I'm willing to abide by what we do here. So watch them all. Watch them in the order they were released. They're all fantastic films. You can't go wrong. You're going to have your own favorite, but if your favorite is not Shaun of the Dead, you just don't like the best Cornetto trilogy film, and you and I can start a support group together. How's that? Asked and answered. And they're all great. They really are. Like, they are.
They're all great movies.
They're all so close to each other. Any one of them would have been a fine choice. I do think we got it down to the right two. And
Cornettos are very good, by the way. Cornettos.
I don't think I've ever had an actual Cornetto.
Yeah, I've had one. I've had them in the UK. I think. I mean, I was a child in the UK, and I remember eating a lot of ice cream there. So I'm pretty sure that I've had that. They're great. Yeah. They're great. But I guess the secret was because Edgar Wright discovered it was a good hangover cure when he was in college or university. So
I like that.
Sure.
It's, so that's also another joke of that is that, and it comes up in Shaun of the Dead. I'm going to the shops. Do you want anything? He's obviously hungover. He wants Cornetto.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Anyway, I'm going to stop interrupting and let Hal.
No, we're done. That's it. We did it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Answered.
Asked and answered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where do you want people to find you? What are you working on now? What's going on in your world?
What's the deets?
Oh, Well, you can, let's see, I have a newsletter at mara.substack.com. It's called Shan't We Tell the Vicar, because I try to come up with a name for a fake British TV show at the end of every entry. And actually, funnily enough, that came out of a tweet that I did like 5 years ago, and Nick Frost retweeted it.
Brilliant. There you go. Cornetto universe. strong.
Yeah, so thank you, Nick Frost, for making that happen.
Well, your Twitter game is strong. You're one of my favorite Twitter voices.
I'm not on there as much anymore because it's so exhausting. But when I was there, I'm looking back on it now the same way that, Gary King would look back on his pub crawl, I suppose. You
don't have to pop the head of Twitter you off at the end of this episode.
I mean, I might have to. If I change my avatar, that's kind of like that. But yeah, I'm also at Mara Wilson on Twitter, at Mara Wilson on Instagram. And one thing I've been doing a lot of these days is audiobooks. Love doing it. Love reading. Love talking. There's more to it than that, but And so, yeah, you can find any of those on Libro.fm, on Audible, wherever you get your audiobooks.
I love it. Well, thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for settling this topic with us once and for all. Thank you for being the voice of reason to Hal.
Oh, bite me, Mark.
This topic is closed, but there are many more to discuss.
You can run it under a cold tap.
Exactly.
Right.
Run that bite under a cold tap.
You'll be fine. Reach out to us on Twitter at We Got This Tweets, or
email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com. Go to our Facebook group. Talk about what you love in the Cornetto film trilogy. That's facebook.com/group/WeGotThisPodcast. Thank you to producer Ken Plume. You can check out all the wonderful things he's doing at patreon.com/you guessed it, Ken Plume. Leave out the you guessed it. Thank you to researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world, who are all on our zombie survival team. We can get through this if we just stick together. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody.
We got this.
We got this.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Audience supported.